Hi, I'm Vesna, and I'm speaking here at Emergent Earth tent. I'm hugely grateful to Claudia and to Igor and to MCH for providing this platform for talking about the impact of internet and technology and hackers to the environmental sustainability and our Earth. The overarching topic for my talk today is communities. So how can we join up in our efforts to contribute to the solution of our problem without being too doomsaying and pessimistic? And the most concrete thing that I want to talk about is a conference that I attended called Computing Within Limits. Oh yeah, also I'm going to be lisping because I got bitten by a wasp yesterday in my tongue. So it's I'm lucky that I can speak at all. The conference itself was an academic interdisciplinary event that actually has been happening since 2015, and this was the 8th edition, also because they were disrupted by the pandemic. And I haven't been there in person ever, but I've been following them closely since 2018. So this year it was a virtual event, and the connection between that conference and the hackers community is that they have been talking about the topics that we have been also covering here at MCH. But also there is a third community that I want to talk about, which is the RIPE community, because I work for the RIPE NCC as a community builder, and the RIPE community also has a big overlap with both the hackers community and the academic researchers. So I'm going to come to this like from kind of three angles. And since we don't have here slides or anything, so all the links you can find at RIPE Labs, which is labs.ripe.net. I have published the article there going through some of the papers that have been presented at the conference, but we also have a section about sustainability, and the other articles are, for example, about how is the flooding that consequence of the both climate change and sea level rise going to impact the data centers. So how can the data center industry prepare for the future of the 2 centigrade higher average global temperatures? So Computing Within Limits, yeah, it's a nice conference. Let me just read about the conference from their own words. So as an interdisciplinary group of researchers, practitioners and scholars seeking to reshape the computing research agenda, grounded by an awareness that contemporary computing research is intertwined with ecological limits in general and climate justice related limits in particular. 2022 submissions moved us closer towards computing systems that support diverse human and non-human life forms within thriving biospheres. So that sounded wonderful like before it started, and then there were great papers presented, and also the format was super weird. They have published all the papers in advance, so then the presentations were limited to 10 minutes, which is very short for academics, and so so there were like three papers presented at every session, so that would be like half an hour, and then there was 1 hour discussion session in breakout groups called reverse panel. So the authors would publish some questions, like what did they want the audience to comment on, and then the participants would have discussions between themselves and write their feedback in the collaboratively edited documents, unfortunately Google Docs, but still. So everything was published, public and transparent and open, and the participation was also for free. So it was really nice a group exercise in like really interdisciplinary. You had people from social sciences, the computer science, the artificial intelligence, the activists, the artists. So it was really, really nice. So some of the papers that I found interesting, for example, strategies for degrowth computing. So that's like combining this concept, economic concept, alternative economic concept of degrowth with the research into the new development of hardware and software, and how can we actually do that by sticking to the physical limit by extending the life of computers, increasing the intensity of use, and what else did they say? Hardware repurposing, software design for the lowered power requirements, and so on. So that actually ties up with your talk and the discussion that we had yesterday. And it also, like so many talks there have mentioned something called Jevons paradox, which is about the how the increase in efficiency actually only leads to the increase of demand. So it doesn't, like the increase in efficiency, which is supposed to then keep the expenditure lower, doesn't happen, because the more things you provide, like they often give example of highways because it's just more tangible for people to kind of understand what's happening. Like the more highways you build, it's not going to lead to less congestion of the traffic. It's just going to produce more traffic, because people will just start using cars more, and there'll be like more cars produced, and people will want to move further away and more frequent and so on. So the same is with the internet efficiency. So here we are, unpredictable weather patterns. Everybody's helping to rescue the papers and clothes from the rain. I'm your reporter now, if you're watching this on stream or even on the recording. Thank you for saving all the papers. Okay, we go on. So the next work was about calculating the carbon footprint of streaming media. Now this is a super controversial topic, because the researchers don't agree on how can you calculate the energy expenditure of the streaming media. And so the authors proposed a holistic end-to-end model that balances the high-level and highly detailed approach. And so oh, shit, everything is getting wet. So they have published that watching 1 hour of Netflix consumes about 1 kilowatt of energy, which is equivalent to a passenger vehicle driving about 2 kilometers. So now you know, when you're binging on Netflix, what does it mean? I'm sure this conclusion will be disputed in the next versions of the Computing Within Limits conference, but their slides were amazing, because so their paper is really worth downloading and looking into, especially if you're interested in this, because they have compared the previous research. Like over the many years, many people are trying to calculate this, and they all disagree with each other. And so Actually, there is an upcoming conference called ACM SIGCOM in Amsterdam at the end of August. And we have organized a workshop there called Building Greener Internet. So one of the papers submitted to that is called 13 Propositions for something like that, like saving the world with green tech or whatever. But that is already pre-published, so it's amazing by posing all kinds of questions related to this topic. So yeah, I'm sure it's going to dispute this paper. So the next one, also very dear to my heart, conceptualizing resource-aware higher education digital infrastructure, which is basically criticizing the fact that all the universities have outsourced their infrastructure, like operating their mail servers and the document sharing and everything, to unnamed huge providers of the cloud services, which I don't want to promote here, like let's say Big Five. And the authors are suggesting alternative strategies for self-hosting, which is kind of return to self-hosting, and yeah, super weird that we went away from that. So I will read it because it's really beautiful. A first quantification of a potential return to self-hosting, emphasizing its effect in energy reduction and avoiding e-waste. Then policy actions are needed that could enable higher education institutions to retake control over their digital infrastructure by building local services. So this kind of ties to so many different aspects of like avoiding centralization and so on. So this mode of operation reduces waste and has the added benefit of increased resiliency to scenarios of resource scarcity and collapse of external infrastructure. The architecture of low impact data centers made upcycled hardware and resource-aware software, there is a significant space to reduce digital infrastructure overall resource footprint. So they are proving that it's actually, it's like the opposite of this claim that if you put everything in a huge data center, that is more energy efficient. They're saying it's not. It's actually better to maintain these services locally, not only for the energy efficiency, but also for the resilience for the climate catastrophes like flooding and fires. And we could see that, like there were outages recently of the huge data centers because of the heat wave, and also because of just nothing related to climate, but like human mistakes, like the Canadian monopoly telco went down for several hours, and it took down all the services around Canada because they all had their eggs in the same basket. So emergency services were down, of course mobile phones, and they couldn't even publish like warning to their users that they are down because they were down and that there was no alternative. So yeah, this like what I just said happened after the conference, so it just really proves the point that the resilience is in decentralization. Then there was an interesting, more like a social scientist, artistic paper called The Richness of Designing for Eco-Social Change. So they were suggesting to reframe limits to abundance of the resources that are naturally not limited, like human connections, human creativity and care. And so this is really like intersectional feminist approach to the concepts of limits in computing. So they called it like this: a fusion of care-infused ecological and social sensibilities to create existential change that would impact lifestyle and political choices and technology use, turning to potentially abundant human resources of imagination, reflection, and solidarity. Their example was of a hologram, a feminist economist healthcare art project situated online, illustrating this potential. So they have been suggesting this project at so many places where I went. So there was a conference in Amsterdam called Money Labs. They were suggesting this as alternative economic project. They're actually presented at the Hope Conference when it was online in 2020. And now here at the Computing Within Limits. So I want to connect this to the mental health crisis that also came to focus during the pandemic. And their approach is super simple. So they illustrated with like a tetra, whatever, pyramid, something in Greek, where you have like 4 points. 1 is you, and 3 is other 3 of your friends. And you form a sort of hologram, kind of a hologram, and you each one of your friends has like responsibility for one aspect of your well-being, and they don't have to be experts, they're just your regular normal people friends. And so one of them is focused on your physical well-being, the other one on your mental well-being, and a third one on your social, economical well-being. And you meet periodically and you have a discussion about you. So they go like, how are you doing? And then they say, oh yeah, last month or over last 6 months, I see that this is happening. And then you covered those 3 aspects, and then you have a discussion like what would be good for you. And that's it. So it can be done in person, it can be done online, it can be once a week or once a month or once a year, depending on what your needs are. And that way you don't depend on the health providers, which are also depleted, and on the classical economy. Like, you really just do this together as a community, and then you expand. So it's not like once, then you do that for other constellations of 4 people groups. So that's what they call hologram. Okay, next one. Oh yeah, I have a question. Have you read or seen any of those Computing Within Limits conferences, papers before? Just Claudia. So it's super cool. Go check it out. The link is on this, behind this link. It's called Computing Within Limits, together, like Computing Within Limits. No, if you just go to labs.rab.net, it's like one of the first articles if you scroll down. It's called Computing Within Limits 2022 Event Wrap. Yeah, so all of their papers are available online. I won't talk about more of them anymore. I just wanted to mention these other opportunities for like combining this with other communities. So as I said, I'm from the RIPE community and working for the RIPE NCC, and we have many events where you could take part, and also working groups where this is relevant. The RIPE community functions as like a voluntary participation of mostly network operators, but also other people who are interested in the global internet governance on mostly very technical level. But we have been seeing over the time that the internet is not for techies and by techies only anymore. So we are including more and more people in our own community, and we are of course overlapping with many different communities. So if you have interest in this, you can take part in different ways, like in, for example, Internet of Things working group, or something that we call cooperation working group, where we cover more soft topics and like legal, political, social topics. Because normally we would only talk about BGP routing, DNS, IPv6, security. Even security is like top layers, like with, and content is completely out of the question. But actually it's not, so it's kind of creeping in with the censorship, with the shutdowns and so on. So these topics of sustainability have also been covered, but it's really not enough focus on them. So I want to invite you to take part, and you can do that online. We have mailing lists. We are also all over different social media, but we don't have like a specific channel where I can invite you to. There is Telegram, there is Twitter, there is Facebook, and Discord and stuff like that. And then we have a meeting in October in Belgrade. Like, it's a large conference. There is a call for presentations open. Normally you would have to pay the conference fee to participate, even if you're a speaker, just like here. But we also have a lot of programs that help people who cannot afford to pay several hundred euros for like 300-400 euros for a week of a conference. So we have academic cooperation program where the academics get sponsored to come and take part, and we also have a fellowship program where anybody can apply, and then we choose who do we want to bring there. So those are the ways that you can take part in the RIPE community. And then there is CCC coming up in December, where we will probably meet again. And they had included a lot of these topics either in their regular program, when they called the conference Resource Exhaustion some years ago, or they have a parallel, like a separate conference called Bits and Trees in German, which I will not try to pronounce. Bäume. Bits and Bäume. And that's happening at the beginning of October in Berlin. Maybe I'll have a talk. I applied. I didn't hear yet if it will be accepted. But there will be parts of this community also there. So for me, the events are like these regular points where we can meet up and synchronize what we are working on. And for the rest, there is the mailing list that I'm on together with Claudia and Igor and many other people that we kind of started in 2013 after the OM conference, where I, for the first time, got exposed to these topics. And it's called Uncivilization. And so you can find the link also like deep down, because following this link, because it's not work related, but I will write it down here anyway. So it's unciv.nl. It's a personal project. The website is maintained by my partner, and it just leads to a wiki where there's a lot of links, and also the mailing list and squirrels. So my obsession with squirrels also started about that time, because I was thinking, like, if this what we're doing to the planet leads to the collapse of human society, fair enough, we brought it onto ourselves. But what's not okay is that we bring the squirrels with us. So we really, I invite you to consider the squirrels when making your political and technical decisions. And more concretely, you can take a squirrel candy now. No, that's just an illustration. That was at the CCC camp also, where the squirrel actually was working against the technology, like Revenge of the Squirrels. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, now we have time for like discussion and your contribution. Are we stopping with this streaming, or we continue with this?
You say it, whatever. I can have the streaming to 2 o'clock.
I'm not staying until 2 o'clock. That's too much. Yes, thank you. What do you say as a streamer?
It's up to you. I just up for it and stuff.
Yeah, because I really would like to talk more about limits of computing.
Okay.
But,
if we do end up recording, please pass the microphone around.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
people can hear you.
because I participate at one conference there, but it was not, for me, it was not clear what for instance, you said that it was only people from academics, but it was not really clear what was the, the goal of something. It was really very everywhere. You involved on organizing the Limits of Computing conference also?
So I'm not involved in organizing it, but I do know a lot of people who are. And the program committee is really mostly academics from a lot of different universities, and it goes around. It's hosted by different universities, and so they try to make it as multidisciplinary as possible, but still it's very, how can I say, like, it's hard for the people who are not academics to even suggest a paper, because you have to write it in that format. Like, so even if they're artists and activists, like this project of Hologram, they have to kind of pair up with somebody who knows how to submit that kind of format of paper, which is okay-ish. Like, you have to work in different groups, like in a group that has multiple kind of skill sets, but it does make it difficult to join. So this is one of the problems that I see across many communities. They're so focused on their own jargon, and that there is so much translation needed between different approaches. Like, this is academic approach, and so if I would invite them to the RIPE meeting, they would be like, well, why should I talk to the network operators? How can I talk to the network operators? And the other way around. If somebody from the network operators would want to submit the work here, it's just so difficult to translate our way of speaking to. So that's why we try to organize a joint meetup workshop at the next academic conference, this SIGCOM. And then you have to pay a ticket. Like, for 1 day workshop, it's a lot of money for people who are not really getting anything out of it. The same for the RIPE meeting. Like, when we invite speakers from outside of our community, there is so many obstacles there. Well, the same for MCH. Like, some people found it very expensive. So there is economic aspect of why this crossover is not happening. So there is economic blockages, the jargon, and yeah.
It's like it's not your, own group, so you're not going to go out on the comfort zone.
Yes.
With others.
Yeah, so that's why it's important to have these crossovers and to tell people, like, but you could take part there. The very important factor that is now making things much easier is that we are moving online. So that's both, like, you don't have to be there physically. You don't have to travel. You don't have to pay. You can just use Zoom.
That's
For the limits, for MCH, for RIPE, like, for everything. Like, if you can't afford to go there physically, either because you don't have money, or you don't have time, or you have small kids that you have to take care of, you can still participate. So this is great. On the other hand, it's great to some extent, because what is the cost of doing the double conference, doing it in person and actually streaming everything? We don't know what the cost is. We think it's actually not too bad, but we don't know, partially because it's hard to calculate, and partially because we don't want to know, because then do we have to cut it out? Like, do we not meet in person, or do we not stream it? And yeah, it's really hard.
But I think people would be more comfortable if you know for sure what the cost is of your action, that you could act on your costs. So that's this kind of thing is what I expected also from the Limits of Computing. And I didn't know anything about it, and I went to the conference. It was a conference, and I was like puzzled, and because I really expected something very practical in this way.
It is practical. They do have a paper published on, like, 1 hour of streaming, doesn't matter if it's Netflix or this, costs like driving a car for 2 kilometers. So some people would, but then is it individual or not? Like, does it take 100 people? Does the cost decrease if just one person is watching the stream, or there's 1,000 people watching the stream? Is it still 1,000 times 2 kilometers? Or is it divided by 1,000 people? And what is the cost of storing it so that the other 1,000 people can see it 5 years from now in the data center, which has to then run 24/7, so that maybe on an off chance somebody is going to want to watch this video. And if I have to say, like, don't store this because I don't want to kill the squirrels because somebody might want to watch me on a video 5 years from now, does it matter? Is it going to switch off the data center for 5 minutes so that my video won't be stored there? And it's not about personal cost, I think. It's really about the systemic. Yeah.
Yeah, but to act at a personal level, when you do something, you want to know, what's my ecological footprint here in this action, and it would really help on a lot of things. Also to allow people to make decisions.
I think that it is part of denial that we enjoy. I personally also enjoy, because and somebody else in some other presentation said recently, like, it was Elvin, one of the answers is like, but we need more measurements. No, we don't. We know it's too much. We don't know how much too much it is, but it's definitely too much. And then the follow-up action would be, but let's not do it. But I don't want to say that because I enjoy it too much.
It's not only that. It's also like I was reading a paper about the mechanisms, emotional mechanisms towards for emotions towards climate change. One of the most used mechanism seems to be this, I don't know if they say, that you minimize your costs. But the thing is, like everything, you're living, it's too much. So we have to make like a more informed choice, but with less paralysis, because this causes paralysis. But if you can choose, knowingly more, you don't have to be very, very as specific as possible, but it leaves you some emotional space to make good decisions.
Yeah, okay, I'd like to pass the mic to other people. Yes?
I would like to have the name of the paper that you mentioned about that self-hosting is more efficient, because I have been told that, people should go to the cloud and it's also more green. And I've been teaching people that because people explain it to me like, you share the resources. And I thought that sounds nice. But so I was also wondering maybe if you could elaborate a little bit more now, or someone else if they have more information about it.
So this specific paper is called Conceptualizing Resource-Aware Higher Education Digital Infrastructure. It's a very long title, but you can find it back through this link, or just Computing Within Limits. The main author is L. Angeli, so you can look it up that way. And of course, it is controversial. Like they probably had their own favorite outcome, and then they did the research towards that. On the other hand, it's not only about energy efficiency, but there are other elements in like why the self-hosting is better than outsourcing everything to the cloud. So they probably took those things into account, and what I like about it is the ethical aspects, which is avoiding the consolidation towards few actors, avoiding the loss of autonomy, and not delegating your sustainability choices to a third party. So that's worth something too, even if the energy efficiency aspects are questionable. But I think they also mention, because they're academics, they mention other papers within their paper. So then you can look it up, cross-reference, and like choose your own bits to confirm your own decisions. Because yeah, that is the beauty and the tragedy of all this academic research. Like there is so much knowledge and so much information that proves anything, and then we still have to choose. Anybody else? No? I want to finish on a nice note. Let me see how. Let me talk about some more interesting ones. So there was something about Solar Protocol exploring energy-centered design. And then an interesting one called Smart Enough or Too Smart, about smart cities. So that's very IoT, within the IoT topics. And but of course they brought it up with the intersectionality to a different aspect, which is saying how all these smart devices actually replace or are aiming to replace the emotional labor. So they call that social reproduction. So how does this technological solution actually impact the areas in our life that do not have to be governed by the Internet of Things or things at all? So, and then they also mentioned the concept of digital circuits of dispossession. So what does it take away from us? Leaving the decision making to algorithms and things. So yeah, I'm having goosebumps. It's really like science fiction material, but then in reality. Oh yeah, and a very, very cool project or paper about that I thought would fit in the MCH so well. It was called OmniFood, exploring the possibilities of a consumer system with ubiquitous access to data about the food we eat. So making choices based on the artificial intelligence, machine learning things and stuff about what you eat. So they did it in Sweden, and they had several methods of getting to that goal, which is intercepting the data between your handheld scanner and the computer that like produces your bill, like how much you have to pay for the things you bought, by also printing the ecological footprint information about every item with color coding and like looking it up in the databases which are open and just saying like, well, this avocado traveled from Brazil to Sweden, or this meat has been grown locally, so it is meat, so that's like really bad, but at least it didn't travel from whatever, like Holland. And so that's one way. And then the other way was when you order things online, and then it like shows you, you know, what are you going to buy and stuff, and then it also shows you like, this is the ecological footprint, impact. Yeah.
Where I live, there is a ecological supermarket that's labeling the foods on the real price of the food you buy, which is very cool.
Yeah, so there is work to be done in this area, but it is also a lot of I'm sorry, I'll swear in Dutch, mierennoken. Because it's like you don't really have to know how expensive that meat is. It's just too expensive, like on the planet. Like so, the same like what I'm saying, like with the technology. Like we say we need more measurements, but actually we know the answer, but we just don't like it.
Yeah, but it's also a kind of. I think it's a kind of shaming people, also. But it works. I don't know everything that works. It's I really welcome. If you buy something, they say, well, okay, feel ashamed. You buy something that's gonna destroy everything you like. No.
Yeah, like Tesla. Uh, okay, let me read some of these slides because it's actually hard. But just to end on a like more tech related. So how to do the degrowth computing? Extend the useful lives of computers. Reuse instead of recycling. Reuse as energy storage, like information batteries, and make autarkic systems, whatever that means. You can look up like the details there. Then use computers more extensively. So share the unused time. Broadly define computers. So like consider all the things that actually have computing power in them, but we don't really think of them as computers, but they actually are, and then use all the other tips for that. And create the low-powered, standardized, smaller footprint devices. And then the third was degrowth design. So consider degrowth in the software engineering, use the flexible computing with the view of intermittent energy. So if you have the like renewable energy sources, they do not give consistent energy, so design for that in the design stage. And then use the open design and the right to repair, and use the degrowth for the hardware engineering. So don't wait until you actually have a hardware that can do certain things and then try tweaking software for it, but use the engineering of hardware with the degrowth in mind from the beginning. But a lot of these are kind of contradictory, because that would mean designing new hardware, but the first one was reuse the existing hardware. So they have to be considered in the balance of what is available and what your goal is. So this is where I want to end. And thank you very much for participation.
And thanks a lot for your insights. And we have also a wiki. It's emergent.earth. So you can. I'm going to add all the information that what happened here, but you'll, of course, it's a wiki. You can also contribute to the wiki. Thank you.